Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, and welcome to the 300th episode of the least watched comic review show on YouTube. It's like I can't take a hint or something. It's been quite the journey, filled with comics from good to okay to bad to absolutely terrible, the occasional animated fare, 3 separate years of a single theme I should probably stop doing for an entire season, and, well, me becoming a cartoon for some reason. Unless this is all a dream or hallucination, but I'm not sure how that would work. But hey, at least I got a sweet Warhammer out of it. And in keeping with another theme, specifically for 100 episodes, which harks back to the review that kicked this show off in the first place, we're going to be talking about my favorite Batgirl, Cassandra Cain. Now, anyone who watches this show know I really don't like her reinvention as Orphan, and I long for the day where it's thoroughly removed from her character. Yet in the comment section of a different creator's video, someone mentioned that both her origins are canon. And before I continue, let me just point out, I have been trying to look into more details, but I haven't found them. So, how does this work? How do both origins happen? You can't have both origins at the same time. That just doesn't work. You can't have Bruce Wayne's parents killed by a random act of violence and a targeted mob hit. It just can't be done. You can't have two of these things at the same time. You can have one origin with the elements of the other, but you can't have both at the same time. I can't find any details. No one will give me a title or an issue number. How does it work? Huh? How does that work? How does...
Angry Spork. Wake up, Angry Spork. You've got a show to do.
What? Huh? What? What's going on?
Finally, I thought maybe that anvil did more damage than I intended.
What? Anvil?
Well, I didn't expect you to be a cartoon, so I had to improvise.
Reinar, is that you? Where have you been, and do you need a lozenge?
I am not your pesky wine bottle, you oaf.
Okay, so who are you?
Oh, I'm sure you would like to know.
Well, I did ask.
Maybe you'll figure it out after I force you to do what you hate the most.
Listen to the so-called comedy of Michelle Wolf?
No! Review an alternate version of your favorite character. Cassandra has always been fairly obscure, seldom featured in other media as often as other Bat characters. A blink-and-you'll-miss-it cameo in Justice League's The Savage Time, briefly seen in the maligned Dark Tomorrow video game. She's a DCU online vendor, and featured in a couple of PC games from the Learning Company.
Yeah, and the Virgin the Birds of Prey Harley Quinn movie had the name and nothing else, oddly having less of what makes the character unique in Tynian's reinvention, but somehow not as terrible. Cass appeared in a couple episodes of the revived Young Justice Season 3 on a mission with Arrowette, Robin, and Spoiler. However, the show's focus can ricochet from the original members of the team to younger ones across DC's pantheon, so she wasn't exactly given much of a spotlight.
Until Season 4.
Well, folks, it looks like we're celebrating 300 episodes by taking issue with Young Justice Phantoms, episodes 5 through 8. So let's see if this adaptation does better with Cass than others, or manages the impossible and is somehow worse. first episode, A Tale of Two Sisters, written by Brian Hofeld, begins with a look at Artemis Crock's life, living with Will Harper and his and Cheshire's daughter Leanne, teaching literature as a professor, dating, and of course fighting crime as Tigress. One night, Grayson and Calderam deliver some bad news. We lost a lot of Wayne Enterprise money and Atlantean treasure investing in NFTs, so Batman and Aquaman cut us off. Can we crash with you for a while? Superboy had apparently died on Mars, a loss that has a noticeable effect on her, like spacing out in class or getting sucker punched by a crook. In fairness, if Leanne keeps knocking over her glass, that's on her dad's poor table setting.
But I alternate between being numb and barely managing to hold it together.
Welcome to my life!
While I didn't notice it at first, there's a nice, very subtle change in tone between before and after she learns of Connor's demise. Things are a bit grayer, a bit darker, to better exemplify what she's feeling. On top of everything, her previous loss of Wally in Season 2 has her greatly sympathizing with M'gann losing her fiancé. If she feels bad, she can just ask Zatanna to find Connor in the afterlife so she can get closure, just like you did, right? Wait a minute. Will says it's fine to cry, solid mental health advice, but she doesn't want to upset her dog Bruce Lee. Maybe that's an excuse to keep herself from being too emotional, because dogs tend to sense their owners' stress and seek to comfort them. A picture of her sister Jade, aka Cheshire, recalls the no mercy training under their dad's sportsmaster. She later talks with her mom Paula, insisting that clobbering crooks, helping people as Tigress, got her through losing Wally, and it'll help here. Note to self, get doctor's note for punching stupid people as part of mental wellness routine. She drives to the university, having herself a bit of a cry before heading inside, all while followed by a mysterious woman. In the library, the stranger is confronted by Arrowette and Arsenal, who eventually incapacitate her. Tigress is suited up, having known she was being followed from her home. And she ain't happy.
You broke the rules. Makes me want to break some rules, too.
I'm gonna tear the tags off so many mattresses, you have no idea! This is Onyx Adams, formerly of the League of Shadows, who's defected and asks for help in exchange for warning them. Vandal Savage's daughter Cassandra plans to infiltrate the team by pretending to defect and ask for help. The heroes aren't buying that she'd turn on her immortal pappy, especially after their previous mole problems.
Hell would have to freeze over.
Speak of the devil...
You might want to break out your mittens. I'll only need the one, thanks.
I don't know if it's insensitive to laugh because of how dark the joke is, or more insensitive not to laugh because she's at least showing a sense of humor about her infirmity.
Stop making jokes! What is this, a comedy show?
Kinda. She claims to have forsaken her dad after he killed her sister Olympia, and then took her arm and scarred her as a lesson. She was sent to Santa Prisca under the watch of Lady Shiva and Deathstroke, and says Onyx is trying to mislead the heroes. Onyx tells a different story about Savage's injuries, though it's not quite first-hand. Neither assassin makes a believable case.
But shouldn't we give them the benefit of the doubt? I mean, how can we be sure?
I've got it! Whoever is not here to betray us, raise your left hand! Too soon? Meanwhile, Cheshire traveled to Ra's al Ghul's base on Infinity Island to kill her old teacher Sensei, and thus lift a bounty on her head. A fight between the two reveals she's no match for the old man, and waits to be finished off. But, per orders from the Master, they no longer deal with the Shadows or Vandal's Cabal, the Light. Talia reveals herself, calling Jade a coward for leaving Leanne. Cheshire gets a notification on her phone and hurries off, with Sensei saying she should come back when she's ready to live. Our Mario Kart game nights are the stuff of legends! Make sure to bring a snack to pass around! With Will's assistance, the Archers decide to take the assassins to one of Green Arrow's bases, one that won't be a huge loss if compromised. We get some fun banter between Roy and Will, but the laughs are short-lived, as Arrowette takes a tranq dart meant for Savage, and several armed assassins emerge from a food truck. The gig economy has finally spawned app-based freelance assassins. It's called Door Slash. The ensuing fight has great action, with the MVP of the whole thing probably being Will for dealing out his whoopins with office supplies. Despite being told to stay put, both alleged ex-Shadows easily free themselves and help our heroes instead of escaping. Later in Ollie's base, after separate questioning by Tigress, Former Shadow Terra offers her insight. Onyx was never bloodthirsty enough for Deathstroke's liking, but Cassandra was always a true believer.
In that world, she'd be quite the scandal.
Feels like kind of a stretch for a reference to a code name from the comics, but I'll allow it. Based on her own experience having a villain for a dad, Spoiler dissents, saying something is likely to break one's loyalty. We've not seen Cluemaster in this universe, so we gotta take her word for it. Almost 19 minutes in, we finally get involvement from Cassandra, who unfortunately goes by Orphan.
Are you feeling the pain yet, Angry Spork? Does it needle you to death?
Yeah, sure. Anyway, I blame synergy with the comics from when this was written. She doesn't think either one can be trusted, and though the other vigilantes make some valid points, if there's a chance one or both women are telling the truth, Artemis wants to give them a chance at redemption. She flashes back to her dad, finding out Jade had left. He didn't really care and focused more on training Artemis. In the present, Jade returns to Will's home, thinking her mom had called because something happened to Leanne. But it wasn't Paula, it was Artemis. Jade, I know we have our differences, but this is important. Do you know where I left my blue running shoes? I've looked all over and it's like they just disappeared. Next episode, written by Brandon Vietti, Artemis Through the Looking Glass, which may be what Jade wants right now. She's livid at the deception and isn't interested in conflicting assassin stories, but changes her tune when she finds out Artemis was tracked to the house where Leanne sleeps. And we're skipping the subplot about Beast Boy's depression. I understand criticisms that it kinda dragged on, but I also appreciate the showrunners taking time to show its onset, the way it affects Garfield's life, and impacts those around him. Speaking from personal experience, real depression doesn't get solved in 20-something minutes, including ad breaks.
But perhaps you don't want a cure for your depression. Maybe you just enjoy being miserable.
If that were true, I'd keep reading Tynian's work. Looker, a telepath, scanned Savage and Onyx, saying both of them seem sincere. However, Orphan relays that shadow agents are trained to thwart psionic probes. Lacking a more experienced Miss Martian, they'll need someone else to find the truth. Another flashback when Jade came back to secretly raid the fridge. She's caught by Sportsmaster and told if she can survive on her own, she doesn't need to mooch off him. She leaves again, calling them mad as hatters upon departure. Present day, Artemis is in a park when her boyfriend Jason Bard passes by, seemingly by coincidence. Not sure about the story behind his prosthetic leg, which I actually didn't even notice when I first saw the episode. Their romantic moment is interrupted by Jade, and after humorous interaction and playful innuendo, he takes off. Try not to portray Artemis in an overly convoluted scheme to take down Batman, if you wouldn't mind. Cheshire's contacts say Savage is being hunted, but had nothing on Onyx, meaning she's either a nobody who'd never make it off Santa Prisca alive, or a ghost, and is to be avoided. Artemis mentions Orphan's perspective, clarifying she's an ex-Shadow that got Batman's seal of approval.
And if the bat says she's cool, you're just supposed to...
Yes.
What, you thought she was some crybaby that needed an arrogant, unlikable, entitled brat from the poor side of town to validate her existence, or half a poorly written children's story to motivate her? Who'd come up with something so ludicrous?
Maybe there's a deeper meaning to those stories that you didn't...
No, there really wasn't. It was just bad writing and self-indulgence. Meanwhile, Black Spider is in a helicopter, conferring with a woman on the radio.
Remember, we want Cassandra alive.
Oh, she'll be a special delivery, handled with care.
Another flashback. While Crusher Croc is out of town, Jade returns, her mad as hatters remark a code for Artemis to pack some food for her. Jade leaves but promises to return for her little sister. In the present, Tigress returns to the vault to relieve Spoiler of guard duty, but finds Orphan there long after her shift. She refuses to leave, even threatened with being told on bats, fails to change her mind. So Artemis yields, so long as she doesn't tell anyone what happens next. No one must know I have the Colonel's secret recipe. Base security is overwritten to let Cheshire in, Cass instinctively going on the offensive until called down by Tigress that she's here to help. Under Jade's questioning, Onyx explains she was raised by her grandfather Will Everett, formerly the hero Amazing Man, but she was recruited by Sensei at age 11 to be the best version of herself. She felt a sense of belonging in the League, until Sensei and Raish left and were replaced by Shiva and Deathstroke, making her feel like little more than a weapon. But weren't you already a weapon before? You know, since you were an assassin? What, did new management do away with motivational posters and daily affirmations?
If you are a bad guy,
But this does not mean you're bad guy.
Savage claims to have become fed up with the shadows, the light, her dad's whole operation. He'd lost any trace of humanity, killed the sister that raised her, and lied that her biological mother was dead, when in fact she'd started another family. She reached out to Tigress because she'd understand being the daughter of a ruthless villain, while Onyx basically searched Artemis Croc on the internet. I think the Google Doodle that day was something about the inventor of flannel. Onyx admits to being so entrenched she's forgotten how to be a regular person. That's why she left the shadows. Savage, on the other hand, sought protection and doesn't trust Jade. Not sure why she's here if she isn't one of the good guys. Both are either truthful or really good at lying, so Cheshire suggests Artemis, having better instincts, go with her gut. Black Spider suddenly attacks the three while a cyborg called Rictus confronts Cassandra in her cell. Tigress frees Onyx, telling her to gear up and provide support if she wants to prove she isn't the mole. The fights spill into each other, with some impressive moves and various weapon skills by Cass. However, she's knocked out by Shiva sneaking up behind her.
Quite the family reunion we have here today.
I understood that reference.
Such an excellently subtle reference. I love it. She threatens to kill Orphan unless they bring Savage to Santa Prisca in 24 hours, drawing blood to make her point as Shade helps them escape. Savage immediately agrees to the terms, not wanting to trade her life for another like her father would. Onyx thinks this is a setup, but Tigress is taking them both, without her team. Cheshire says that's bonkers, since they're rescuing Shiva's daughter.
What? Oh, the Bat didn't tell you that part, did he?
It's true I didn't mention that she was the daughter of an assassin, but in fairness, I didn't say she wasn't the daughter of an assassin. I accept your apology. Shiva raised her own kid to be the ultimate weapon, only training her to kill and read body language. To that end, taking the much more grim measure of surgically severing her vocal cords.
Something I wish someone would do to you.
Yeah, you're probably not alone.
I recognize those scars on Orphan's throat. She is Cassandra Wu-san.
Cheshire doubts Shiva would kill her own child, but reconsiders when Savage points out that shadows aren't above terminating their own progeny. Regardless, she opts to leave, repeating her Mad as Hatter's line. Flashback to the night Jade was supposed to come back for Artemis, but never did. Instead, her dad returned to find their food all gone, so decides the youngest can train while hungry. Not sure why we linger on this shot of the apartment across the way. Earlier, another family was fighting, but after Crusher returns, we hold on a shot of an empty couch and drink splatter on the wall. Maybe it's to emphasize Artemis's feeling of loneliness, that she's stuck in her current situation for the time being, unable to change her circumstance. Maybe I'm looking for meaning where there is none. Maybe shoes were really meant for our hands. Maybe I'm just rambling at this point. Taking the Supercycle, a living vehicle from New Genesis, Artemis, Onyx, and Savage fly to Santa Prisca. Next episode, The Lady of the Tigress, written by Nicole Dubuque. Cass Savage says she'll willingly swap her life for orphans, but Artemis shoots that down. If she truly wants to leave the shadows behind, she must stop thinking like them. Onyx accuses that offer was just a ploy to ingratiate herself to the heroes, knowing it'd be refused.
And you attack my integrity, knowing it will sabotage my chances with Tigress.
Phrasing.
I don't think she swings that way, Cassandra. And she has a boyfriend, which I figure complicates things that much more.
Cut it out, both of you. We all have to work together to get Orphan back.
Save the arguing for your own spin-off where you're wacky mismatched roommates working at a bar and carrying out assassinations to pay for culinary school. The working title is Killers in the Kitchen. Oracle contacts Tigress covertly, saying the Justice League computer in Green Arrow's vault was accessed. You'd think Ollie wouldn't fall for scam emails from people claiming to be Saint Walker's widow, but you'd be wrong. At least one alleged former Shadow isn't as former as advertised, using Artemis to transport the data. The Bat family has a Gotham turf war on their hands, but with one of their own in danger, they drop everything to help recover Orphan. Using high-tech lenses, which probably require quite the prescription, Tigress turns the offer down, as Barb hopes she made the right call.
And after Jason, well...
She actually means Jason Statham. He was playing a new movie franchise in Gotham called Bat and the Furious, but he and Nightwing clashed on set, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Though I could see Batman personally going, maybe taking one or two allies, but leave the others to look after Gotham. Not just to keep the city protected, but because he'd be confident in himself and anyone he brings to be enough for the job. On Santa Prisca, the kidnapped Cass is chained inside an open cell. Shiva approaches, glad to have her home, but disappointed and perplexed. You read Batman and Robin Eternal too, huh? Just wait until you get to Detective Comics at Rebirth. Shiva had such greatness intended for her daughter, levels even beyond her own abilities, and yet a simple mission saw her turn to the bats, when the young Shadow was tasked with eliminating the Joker. Immortality and regeneration aside, Vandal really didn't appreciate that exploding whoopee cushion. Tigress parks Supercycle off the Santa Priscan coast, and they scuba the rest of the way. One of them gets cut and the blood attracts a shark, which I believe is not scientifically accurate. Bad news for the fish because Savage kills it to save the others. This is done over Artemis's narration reciting Frank R. Stockton's short story, The Lady and the Tiger, about a king having to choose between two doors. Behind one was a woman who'd marry him on the spot, and behind the other, a man-eating tiger. His choice relied on the direction of his daughter, who both loved and was jealous of him. The door he ultimately picked had a brand new car! When they make it to land, Artemis secretly releases an Oracle stealth drone, and the two quarreling killers manage to work together scaling cliffs and taking out guards. One had taken aim at Artemis before being subdued, and Oracle thinks she actually saw the goon but feigned otherwise to test her companions. In any event, they know this will tip off Shiva, showing they've arrived on time and sparing Orphan for now.
For each door holds both results, right up until the moment it's opened.
By chance was the barbarian king in this story called Schrodinger? Sure enough, guards failing to report in does not go unnoticed. Shiva anticipates Tigress's plan to escape with both Cassandras, but won't let that happen. While this was largely about obtaining Justice League data for the Light, she wanted to give her daughter a second chance at her destiny. You'll manage one of the Wendy's in my franchise, and you'll like it! Flashback to Joker's message for Vandal Savage. Back in Season 1, Mr. J joined other villains to form the Injustice League, but recently learned he was the only one not told the group was a front to keep the actions of the Light secret. Insulted, he planted Joker venom bombs at the UN with Donna Troy, Tempest, and Lex Luthor in attendance. Detonation would deal a blow to forces both good and bad. The Bats are quick to disable the bombs while he's addressing his captive audience.
He starts monologuing.
In the present, Tigress preps her cohorts for a stealth operation, as Oracle pleads that they save Orphan, who's like a sister to her. They wait for nightfall and find the Shadow's base, when Oracle cuts their power, leaving only emergency backup, no sensors or alarms. The three head inside, taking out guards as necessary, while Babs' drone searches for Cass. Suddenly, Onyx puts a sword to Savage's throat, still suspecting treachery. Cassandra then throws Onyx over her shoulder, using her missing arm. Turns out her real father is Phantom Limb from Venture Brothers. Who knew? She used a glamour charm to alter her appearance, a trick used by Tigress in Season 2 when she joined Black Manta's crew on the sly. Her never-sliced arm releases infiltrator nanites containing the stolen data.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal!
That's when Oracle spots Cass, and we go back to the UN. Just as the young assassin was about to make Joker the clown prince of corpses, Batgirl pushed him clear at the last moment, taking the blade to her spine. It's probably more than what Cartoon Network would have allowed, but not gratuitous. Between the visuals and actress Alison Stoner's scream, it still feels quite intense. So really good job on her part. Cass is stunned by this as the Bats converge to take care of their teammate, and Barbara offers her hand.
I wasn't trying to save Joker. I was trying to save you.
There's a lot here. Cassie stopped from ever taking a life at the cost of Barbara's legs. The sincerity in Batgirl's words, how she wanted to prevent someone from killing another, even if it was the Joker, and that they formed a bond after this, says a great deal about Barb's compassion and capacity to forgive.
But how is this any different from your Batman and Robin Eternal?
Well, this origin doesn't infantilize a character and make her entire existence about someone else, so there's that. They quickly exposited earlier about how she can read people, but with so much going on, it'd be easy for that to slip a viewer's mind. I think it would have been a great time for a visual cue to help sell Cass's feelings in this moment, a creative indicator from her unique POV related to her body reading. But to be fair, the show's always working on a tight budget, so I kinda get it. Moving on, Oracle has to deal with the stolen data, promising to come back as the drone leaves Orphan a lockpick. The nanites head for a cylindrical device meant to collect the data, but a sonic pulse from Babs disables them. Shade, Rictus, and Black Spider show up, but instead of another fight, Cheshire appears with some gas to incapacitate them. Oracle leads Tigress, and thus the other two, to Orphan's cell, and as things start looking up, the assassins reappear, joined by several Shadow Goons and Lady Shiva.
Surrender or die.
That's the name of the YouTube channel she started to compete with Funny or Die. Very different content by comparison. Written by Greg Weisman, we have the final episode, I Know Why the Caged Cat Sings. It's tired of people thinking it only knows the Meow Mix theme when the cat actually draws influence from Johnny Cash, the Mamas and the Papas, and Van Halen. Shiva states she'll make an example of Onyx and Cheshire, keep her daughter, and Artemis will be allowed to leave unharmed. Tigress asks if Savage's confessions were real or not, and it turns out her dad did kill her sister, but Cassandra considered it a mercy. Somehow. And she's happy she was saved from a mundane life with her birth mother.
These half-truths and the glamour charm that faked your injuries?
All designed to engender instant sympathy.
Oh, so Detective Comics Rebirth, but more honest and believable. She gets them to elaborate on their intent to steal the League data and even clear Onyx, admitting to playing on her subpar espionage skills and letting her choose to warn the heroes. The data was lost, but Shiva is happy to have her daughter back, which is when Orphan breaks free and takes out the room's one light bulb. What follows is a really cool fight in the dark, with nice effects as swords clash or energy is blasted. Cass holds her own against Shiva, but Oracle thinks her mom is still too advanced. Tigress steps in, but gets stabbed in the leg, either because she was less ready for Shiva, or maybe the killer was holding back against her own kid. Though a couple enemies are taken down, Tigress and the others are surrounded and targeted when power is restored. Worst slumber party ever. They make a getaway thanks to the Shade, with Shiva and a couple shadows following them through the portal to the shore. Jade and Onyx attempt to knock the goons back through, and I'm not going to show what happens, but Shiva cuts them in half, looking more enraged than before. She probably did that because otherwise they would have knocked her back with them, so either she couldn't and thought they were expendable, or she's so angry she could care even less about them than before. She accuses the Shade of treachery, and he explains he was paying back a debt to Cheshire, but is going freelance from now on, resigning from the League of Shadows as he takes his leave. Can you blame him? Two guys just got bifurcated by their boss. The Shadows' health plan is not that great. Supercycle, or New Genosphere if you prefer, arrives for backup and departure. Unable to stop them, Shiva demands Cass stay behind. Otherwise, Shadows will go after everyone she cares about. Name-dropping Barbara in the threat sets Cass off, and mother versus daughter round 2 begins. It's not a long duel, as the younger fighter quickly dominates and impales Shiva in the gut. Despite how very fatal the blood loss appears, Cassandra seems ready to go Highlander and take her head. Am I the only one hoping someone cuts this into a music video for Queen's Princes of the Universe? Because that'd just be frickin' awesome!
Stop fabricating positives and be tortured already!
Whine. Are you sure you're not Whinar? Barbara begs her not to go through with it, and after recalling the night she met and crippled Batgirl, Cass yields, joining the others and leaving Santa Prisca. Her mother says she can't escape who she is, and tells her to return when she's ready to admit that. I mean, that's what I keep saying, but DC for some reason wants to keep it canon. In a flashback, Jade told Sensei her sister was too weak to join the Shadows, but was instructed to recruit her anyway. In a parallel conversation around this time, Artemis felt Jade was just like their dad, but Paula said that family has a better chance of helping the elder daughter than prison. Presently, as everyone is recovering in a safe house, Artemis video calls Will, easing into the idea of bringing Jade home. When Leanne shows off a paper mask she made resembling Cheshire's, this disturbs Jade and she bolts.
What was the thought process?
Nightmares.
She did the same thing whenever Leanne drew a picture and asked if it was going on the fridge. Tigress, Onyx, and Cass followed Jade's stolen helicopter to Infinity Island, only for their quarry to turn and force them to hit the water. That's one sturdy Earthcopter if it can do that to a living alien space car, though not so sturdy when crashed into Sensei's front yard. She charges the old man, guarded by a red-hooded ninja, but Tigress intervenes, leading to a shouting match. with intensity that doesn't really match their facial expressions. Jade finally admits her problem, that she's too much like Sportsmaster, doesn't want Leanne turning out like her, nor to bring her or Will into her world, and feels like she's trapped in a cage. You know, like the episode title! Onyx chimes in, saying that being raised by Amazing Man was great and all, but his ideals of leading by example and doing what's right soon frustrated her. She felt the world would never see her worth, until she found a new kind of family in the shadows. Though the Secret Santa isn't great, you either get a gift card or another sword sharpening kit. There is no in-between. Sensei points out this was all part of the Shadow's plans. From the moment they were born, the organization kept watch over the daughters of Croc and grandkid of Amazing Man, and played the long con, indoctrinating them into thinking they had a better home among assassins than biological family, to breed loyalty and fanaticism.
But per the Master, we are no longer in that business.
We got sued by Fox News for trademark infringement. If they're willing, Sensei offers to rehabilitate both Cheshire and Onyx, with Ra's al Ghul showing up to promise he'll help them. Artemis is skeptical, but he reminds her that he's no liar. Take note, when he appears, everyone but Tigress bows, even Cass. If that's not programming, that's just a sign of mad props. Jade and Onyx take Ra's on his offer to join his real family, and he even welcomes Artemis checking in on them periodically. The episode ends with a montage of still frames juxtaposing various families. Biological and found, strained and estranged, and, ex-assassin therapy? That was Young Justice Phantoms, episodes 5 through 8. And despite valid criticisms about this season, these episodes were still really good.
What?
You heard me. Admittedly, Cassandra's portion of the story was part of a twist, one that's done very well, and subtly given away. Notice they have two characters with the same name, each with a different pronunciation. One with a long A, the other short.
Cassandra Savage is on her way here.
Remember, we want Cassandra alive.
When Shiva tells Spider to relieve Cassandra, it's an indicator that they're going after her daughter. At the same time, it doesn't spoil the reveal that Cassandra is a plant or the data hack scheme. It could have just as easily been Shiva's preferred pronunciation. Looking back, one might think Savage's fight with Rictus was purely to mislead the audience, and in World wouldn't be necessary since the characters that need to be convinced can't see them. However, our heroes catching them in a brawl would help sell Savage's story. As for the banter the two share, it could be akin to an inside joke or something, a challenge between colleagues that need to fight for the mission, but maybe don't mind testing themselves against each other. The plan was very well layered, establishing a phony tale for Onyx about Savage's lost arm, seeding some facts like her dead sister, and using the hidden limb to house the nanites. It all worked together perfectly for later subversion. Onyx's story about her super granddad, or thinking Arrowette and Arsenal were other shadows, could have worked had she been the plant. The creators masterfully balance what info to give and how, though there are exposition dumps that may not hit with the same impact they could under different circumstances. The arc is more about Artemis and Jade, if the wordplay mixing their traits and identities to classic literature wasn't indicator enough. It does a good job of building off scenes reused from Season 1, economically enhancing the story. They still cared for each other, but something always kept them apart, mostly on Cheshire's end. She was so frustrated and scared about her life damaging Leanne's, she challenged a more skilled warrior to 2 fights to the death, knowing she couldn't win. She was intentionally looking to get herself killed because she saw no other way, making her story more tragic. It's great she and Onyx will be healing from their trauma, but Talia's face makes me wonder if something more nefarious than meditation is in the works. Also not sure why they mention Ra's al Ghul's name once, but every other time it's the Master or the Great One. Even in previous episodes they did this. Is it like an F-bomb in a PG-13 movie and they can only use it once per story arc?
Enough stalling! Get to what this is really about!
Oh, you mean how this works as an alternate backstory for Cassandra, not Cain? It's not what I would have envisioned for the first animated in-depth look at the character's origins, but I think it's pretty good, even if I don't love everything about it. Still raised to be the ultimate assassin, but there's no indication she killed anyone during, say, training. Apparently the creators had her mother train her because they've done the hero-daughter villainous dad thing to death and wanted to change it up. That's fine and fitting, considering Shiva in the comics, the good version anyway, admitted she birthed Cass to have a successor. though cutting her vocal cords felt way too extreme to explain why she's mute.
I was using ghoulish overkill! Ghoulish overkill, Summer!
Which makes me wonder how she processed language and words, how a telepath-like looker interprets her thoughts, or what the voice of her inner monologue is like. Her story also explains how Earth-16 Barbara became paralyzed, works in the Joker, so he plays some part in the act. And on a side note, I do like Brent Spiner in this role. I think he does a really good job. And unlike a certain reinvention, this actually does something both different and interesting that can logically still give a similarly heroic result for Cass. Instead of being horrified by ending a life, she's struck by humanity, the compassion and selflessness of someone that was instantly concerned for the soul of a complete stranger, even if it meant sparing one of Gotham's worst criminals. She permanently bound this heroine to a wheelchair, and yet Batgirl can still forgive her with little to no hesitation, and would go on to consider Cassandra a sister. And it's that compassion and humanity learned from Oracle that Cass chose to pass on to her own mother.
You have learned something, and I have learned something. Too bad we didn't learn it sooner. We could have gone to the movies instead.
My older sister once sat on me for not listening to her. Mom said I could stay up later, thank you very much.
But don't you think it was a gamble on Barbara's part? That this wasn't a seasoned killer with a body count in the hundreds? Feels like quite the stretch, doesn't it? Especially since we don't get much to go on for their relationship.
Yeah, but as I said earlier, infinite comic roster, itty-bitty budget. Much like how they kept that troublesome name Orphan, her assassin suit became her vigilantism garb, like the comics reboot, just changing the mask. In both cases, I feel like if she was really traumatized enough by her actions to abandon the shadows, she'd have gone with an entirely new suit. Heck, making her Batgirl when she first appears in the show would have made more sense, as it'd be honoring Barbara. Though again, synergy with the comics, so either the showrunners didn't really care, or thought they could work with it regardless. I doubt it was mandated by someone at DC, because that would imply someone there cared about how Cassandra is portrayed, and I have serious doubts about that. And while thanks to the comics, I still hate the name Orphan for her, it works in this series because, well, it's not based on a serial killer's name. It can feel lacking that the character doesn't have dialogue and spends most of her time wearing a mask that prevents any facial expressions. In fact, I wonder how much about her Batman really knew, like her real name. Or was she always just called Orphan by everyone? The animation is great and can be kinetic when it needs to be, but I admit that I don't feel this did the best to exemplify Cassie's skills. They're by no means portrayed bad here, but a lot of what she's seen doing isn't very different from what other characters have done in episodes past. Mark my words, if I ever get enough money, I'll personally finance an animated film about Cass and her good origin, with action directed by the master of the silent narrative, Genndy Tartakovsky.
Yes, I'm sure it'll happen right after you win the lottery.
It could happen. One particular rage-inducing oversight I noticed, creators of featured characters get named in the closing credits, but not Cassandra Cain's creators, Kelly Puckett and Damian Scott. I'm not sure why. If it's because she didn't have any lines, that's a cheap cop-out. If it's because they changed her surname to Wu San for the show, that's a stupid cop-out. If it's because of the Orphan thing and how that title was given to her by another writer, that's a stupider cop-out. Is this going to be Bill Finger all over again, where we wait decades for proper respect to be paid? Heck, were the rightful creators financially paid for this? Because Warner Brothers has been very sketchy about that. Changes are to be expected when a comic character jumps to another medium. While not every detail of this adaptation may be to my liking, I feel Cassandra Wu San fits in about as well as all the other characters that have been changed to make Earth-16 stand out.
So why aren't you more infuriated? How is this any different from Tynian's reinvention that you despise so much?
Well, try paying attention. This origin doesn't feel reductive or infantilizing of Cass like the post-New 52 origin and subsequent Tech run. It worked well with the themes of relationships, family, sisterhood, mothers and daughters, or parenting in general when Superman at his most human tries to explain death to his son. Paula, a former criminal, says that her irresponsibility rubbed off on Jade, but just as she changed her ways, the story ends with Jade trying to better herself for her child. Shiva never learned from her errors and lost her daughter twice. It kind of rushes and exposits, which almost humorously conflicts with a mute character who's all about physical action, but that's a result of integrating decades of comic history. It wasn't without some subtle details, like the symbolism of Shiva glaring at the shackles that previously imprisoned Cass, or Artemis's assassin quandary paralleling the Lady and the Tiger.
Well, I must admit to some disappointment myself.
Did you expect my head to explode or something?
Oh, this wasn't about your destruction. This was simply meant to be torturous. But I guess I've learned something too.
Yeah, until we meet next time, blah 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 blah.
One day, Angry Spork. One day!
Is he gone now? Okay, so my life just got more complicated, I guess. Unless this is going to be like that guy who showed up once for my 100th episode and never heard from again. Anyhow, while I had some reservations about Cass's inclusion in the show, and some of the fight scenes were a little too heavily shadowed for my taste, Weissman and his crew have proven to be capable storytellers, unlike some I could name. And that was exemplified here. Great animation, great voice acting, and they went in the smart direction and didn't involve a certain blue-haired pimple. So good on them all the more. Thanks for watching the 300th episode, and here's to me hopefully getting out of this soon. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.